This episode of Sailing Sayla is a special one. Instead of telling more of our story, we're coming to you in current time to talk about how we decided which sailboat to buy.
We are doing a video in the present. This little clip is going to talk about what we were looking for when it came to a liveaboard sailboat and what we would be doing with it. Currently we're in a boatyard up north. The boat is shrink wrapped, as you can see.
That's why it looks kind of weird.
We are like a few miles from Maine, and so we're in the very north tip of Massachusetts right now. We definitely want to show you guys the whys that we selected what we selected, but what we were actually looking for. And what we selected, what we ended up with, was not exactly what we were looking for. On one hand, it was a little better, and on the other hand, it wasn't as good. So we'll clue you in on those things.
Yeah, that will all unfold as we continue to tell the story.
Yeah. In the end, it's going to be okay, and but it does come with a lot of work. So, what were we looking for in a boat?
Well, we were more interested in a boat that had just 2 staterooms, like an owner's version, as opposed to something that had 3 or 4, because the staterooms are bigger that way, and we don't plan on having a bunch of people with us. We may have a kid or 2 come and stay with us for, temporarily for a few days, but it's mostly just going to be the 2 of us on the boat. So we don't need a bunch of bedrooms. We would rather have bedrooms that are larger.
Yeah. It's, some of the people have told us, and also some of the YouTube videos of people that are living this life, when they have a bunch of people, it's a lot of work, and we're trying to not work so much, but we do love to see like close friends and family, and so that's why we wanted an extra guest room, basically. In boat language, it's a stateroom, and so a lot of the boats we were focusing on were this owner's version, whereas these charter boats, they'll have in a boat like in the 40-45 foot range, you can have 3 to 4 bedrooms or staterooms, and even some extra berths for like additional people, crew or kids or something. Things that could be made out to beds, like U-booths, and like the couch area is called a settee, and I still don't know what that means, why, but anyways, so those could be made up in a bed, and some of that can be used like when you're underway, because it's kind of hard to sleep in a big stateroom on a queen bed when you're rolling around out to sea on a passage, and so there's some
but
pros.
Since we'll be at anchor a lot of the time, we prefer to have a nice big stateroom with a bed that we can stand up and walk around, and there's plenty of storage space, which we get from having the center cockpit, which is something that we were really preferring when we were looking at boats also.
Yeah. I mean, you can have a nice stateroom in the aft part of the sailboat with an aft cockpit layout with dual helms or a single helm. That could be fine. And you can even have like a centerline queen bed, and that could be okay. And you know, you just have to kind of lower your head when you get into the bed. I mean, you couldn't sit upright necessarily. Some we've seen that you can, but the spatial size is, especially with Melissa, she likes to have a lot of room above the bed, so she doesn't feel so closed in. You know, I think I've mentioned it before. I can like sleep in a coffin if I had to. Well, I don't want to do that, but anyways, it's something that we both agreed on that we would like to have, and that would be on one of our highlights of, you know, checking your boxes when you make a list of everything that you're looking for. We did like the idea of a center cockpit because they tend to be a little bit more safe inside, where you can be kind of buttoned in a little bit more, especially with rough seas. And our plans is to not just stay around the U.S. and inshore and just pop offshore and sail a little bit and then pop back in the intercoastal. We're hoping that we can like take off, like go, you know. And so there, a center cockpit moves the whole seating outside at the helm more forward, and that's closer to the mast, and so the boat kind of pivots like this, as opposed to let's say this is the stern and here's the bow. You know, it can come up like this, and so if you got into some really big seas, then you know, you're going up and down a lot, and this is a little bit more stable as far as that's concerned. So that was one of the benefits. The downside of a center cockpit is there's not a ton of seating area in there. I mean, you could probably sit 6 people in here, but you know, whereas an aft cockpit you could seat 8 to 10 people. But again,
we most likely won't have 8 to 10 people at the same time on this boat.
Yeah,
so.
But yeah, I mean, there's enough to be comfortable, but also there is seating back in the aft deck area, and we will talk about that later. What else were we looking for?
Well, we wanted a boat that had a watermaker and
Or
a
a place for
generator
one.
or a place to put those things, because if we're going to be kind of off grid, we need to be able to be self-sufficient, so we need to be able to make our own power and make our own water. So
Yeah, and a lot of the people that we've consulted with and talk about that are long-range sailors. They prefer to have a generator to charge batteries. I mean, of course, we're going to have solar panels and lithium iron phosphate batteries to have more battery electrical storage. Sometimes you don't have bluebird skies all the time, and
yeah, if it's cloudy, sometimes the solar panels are not enough, so we need to have a generator as a backup.
yeah, and sometimes it's not about, oh, we need to have a lot of light and stuff. It's not necessarily that, but like, let's say you have a water maker and we're almost out of water and we got to fire up the generator to get that thing going, as opposed to firing up the whole diesel engine and getting electricity from the alternator. A generator is more energy efficient for that. What else?
We were looking for what's called a shoal draft as opposed to a deeper draft keel, because we are interested in sailing around the Bahamas and the Caribbean, and there's quite a bit of relatively shallow water there. So
right. Yeah, I mean, we're from Florida on the Gulf Coast, and in the Gulf Coast, unlike the Atlantic side, the water can be very shallow. Of course, you know, you've got to have all of your navigation charts and electronics showing you where to go, what you can do and what you can't do. Even in Florida, there's all kinds of little islands that you can anchor around. You know, from Florida, we could go down to the Keys, and of course, there's tons of stuff to do down in the Keys. But with all of this, you're limited on how close you can get to shore. By the way, we are
this boatyard is right by a busy road and a bridge, and people tend to like to rev their car engines around here.
Yeah,
like it's the 80s or something.
Right. Yeah. There's a bridge just right over here, and it's like living in the late 70s, early 80s, and everybody wants to like rev their car or rev their motorcycle up as they're going up the bridge.
I guess that's just a thing around here.
Yeah. Well, there's a restaurant at the bottom of the bridge, so they're kind of wanting to show off to all those people. But anyways, we are going to touch on monohull versus catamaran. We did choose monohull. I'll talk about that in a minute. But anyways, back to where we are. A shoal draft is a term that it's got a shallower keel. The keel can be longer, or it can be a wing keel, or it can have more weight. But overall draft from the water line to the bottom of the keel is short enough to be reasonable. So in monohull, some shoal drafts could be as shallow as like 4.5 feet, but that's not really that common. To as much as 6.5 feet. And there you can get into some pretty shallow anchorages. The bottom line is we wanted to stick around this 5 to 6 foot range based on the size of the vessel that we were looking for. And so these boats that we were gauging with on our searches, like the Island Packet or the Catalina or the Hunter brands, but primarily they offered two different styles. Well, Hunter offered two different, and Catalina did. Island Packet was just this long keel, shallow draft boat. Very, very strong blue water cruiser, but you know, the thing drafted between 4.5 to 5 foot. So so that is considered a blue water cruiser, very robust boat. Kind of pricey, but still. But if you get into the ones that come over from like France and Europe, like the Beneteaus and the Genots and stuff, they'll have like a bulb keel, and those keels tend to be a little deeper. And so they did have a shallower shoal draft version on some of them. So the bottom line is the shoal draft was the one thing that we were looking at, but able to go offshore. And then secondly, on that keel, I was looking for a very robust keel. So something that was very heavy duty and sturdy, not like a real skinny little bulb on the bottom and a bolt-on keel. I was looking for something that was a little bit more substantial. But anyways, so that whole shoal draft thing was a big plus for us. The second thing that we were looking for is for the mast not to be taller than a certain height. So in Florida and a lot of the bridges that are up the intercoastal waterways along the East Coast, they'll have a maximum bridge height at, I think, mid to high tide at 65 feet. So your overall rig, and this is what they call an air draft instead of the water draft depth. So now we're talking from the water line up to the top of the mast, and then some. You'll have like antennas and stuff like that up there, but that we didn't want taller than shy of 65 feet, plus or minus. And so there's some models that are, they'll have a deeper draft keel for ocean passages, but then they'll also have a taller mast and therefore have more sail area, and these are blue water boats that can really get up and go, but then they're limited on coming into the intercoastal waterway, and we wanted to be able to tool up and down the intercoastal waterway, and in the intercoastal waterway, even though there are people, I've talked to people that have navigated through those channels with a deeper draft boat, a lot of people do recommend a shallow draft boat or shallower shoal draft boat. So that was our preferred thing that we were looking for. Okay, so what else were we looking for?
Well, storage was a big issue that we had to figure out how we were going to be able to store things if we're living on the boat full time. We needed to have, like, for example, clothing storage that would be more in drawers or closet type of format, so that we wouldn't have to be digging in, underneath cushions and into weird compartments to get at our clothes. And we wanted food storage areas that would be convenient and that would allow us to store enough food to go out away from where stores are for a period of time. And also we have to be able to store tools and parts, because if we're going to be away from quote unquote civilization, we have to have the ability to fix things that might go wrong while we're out there. So all of those things were things that we were thinking about when every time we got on a boat, is where would we store this, where would we store that, is there enough room? And a lot of boats they're made more for people who are just going to go out on weekends and just sail around, and we needed something that was set up more for somebody that's going to live on a boat as their full-time home for months or years at a time. Yeah. So that was kind of a little bit different than what some people may be looking for.
Yeah. I mean, we've been on a couple boats that are beautiful boats, and you went down inside and it felt very roomy, and it had a lot of things on the outside that you're checking the boxes off and go, wow, we like this, we like that. But then you start digging around and looking for, well, where's all the storage on this boat? Because I see a couple things underneath the settee and whatever couches or seating that they
under the V berth bed or something, but then there's not really convenient places to store clothing or tools or things like that. So
Right. Yeah.
that was a big consideration for us.
Yeah, when it comes to Liveaboard, you're like, and for what we are hoping to do, which is taking off and going long-term cruising, not just around the United States, but to be able to take off, and then we want to be capable of, if everything is okay, and you know, we look at each other and go, okay, let's go, let's keep
Let's
going.
cross an ocean.
Well, yeah. So we want to be able to do that and be able
If we
to.
decide to do it.
Yeah, and you have to be able to carry stuff that you need. But yeah, we wanted a good balance of clothing and different functional things to live day to day with. But then for me, I needed to know where I could put tools and stuff, because when you're out there, a lot of times you're the only one that, you know, is available to take care of whatever problem that comes your way, and you're not always near a convenient marina with some marine, you know, supply places around where you can get parts and stuff. So you got to have basic storage for basic parts that, you know, are just common things that you got to replace and service the different systems on the boat. But you know, you've got some, you know, tools that you need. I mean, you don't have to bring you know, everything from the garage, but you have to be mindful of what you're bringing, that's going to be sufficient enough but not like overwhelming amount of stuff, and how you're going to store it. And we'll talk about these things in other videos. But getting back to the layout of the boat, originally we were even looking at buying Melissa's aunt and uncle's smaller boat to start off with, you know, start small and then work up later. But when we really started thinking about it, it's almost like, let's go big or go home, you know. Well, to a certain extent.
Well, if we're gonna do all the work to refit a boat, we would rather do it one time and then have a boat that's gonna take us anywhere that we want to go, and not have to feel like, oh, now we have to sell this boat and upgrade to a different boat.
That's right.
So.
And you can have those size boats that are plus or minus around 40 foot. Those are the things that we looked at in a monohull, is plus or minus 40 foot for a couple can be very comfortable with room and storage. You know, like we go back to this Hunter 42 Passage. It had quite a lot of storage and a lot of features that we did like, and then we looked at some other ones that were kind of almost there, and checked some other boxes that the Hunter didn't check, but in the end, we just kept looking, and then we started looking at around the 44, 45, 46 foot range, and we found that was even a little bit more appealing, and talked to some more people about that size boat and what they're capable of. And so yeah, that's kind of how our list was. And I guess the last thing we need to talk about was monohull versus catamaran. So what's your thoughts? What were we talking about back then?
Well, we mostly stuck to looking at monohulls, and for the main reason was just that a catamaran just costs so much more than a monohull, and we couldn't really justify the price.
Right.
So we did look at a few smaller catamarans, but the ones that we could afford were really too small for what we needed to do, and they didn't really have the storage space, and some of them Ted couldn't even stand up all the way, like in the galley in the salon. And if you're going to be living full-time on a boat, you don't want to be living like this.
Yeah.
You need to be able to stand up in your home.
Yeah. Well, and that's all part of the comfort level on
Yeah.
any boat is, you have to look at yourself and
Yeah.
I'm 6'2", and Melissa's kind of a tall gal, and so we needed, we like to have a little bit of space above our head. I didn't want to be walking around like this, so that cut us out on a lot of boats. I mean,
Right.
we even looked at I think it was a 40 or 42. Was it a Fontaine Peugeot or something, an older one?
Yeah, I think it was a 42 maybe.
Yeah, and in the galley, my head
Yeah,
was having
you
to
couldn't
do
even
this
stand up.
in the galley because
Yeah.
the galley was forward, and
Right.
I mean, it had some good features
Yeah,
about
it
it,
did, but it didn't work for us, and it was a little bit over our price range anyway. So
yeah, the catamarans, they tend to bring good money, although there are some people that are looking in the charter companies that charter those boats. I'll just tell you, the moorings is a good place to look, and but those boats tend to be a little out of our price range. Well, in
now-
some cases, a lot out of our price
Yeah.
range, and we weren't trying to go to that extent.
Well, and not only the cost that you have to lay out initially, but then there's more things on a catamaran, like they have 2 engines as opposed to 1, so there's just more things to upkeep and more things that could possibly go wrong. And also when you're talking about putting it in a slip somewhere, it requires a wider slip, so that costs
Yeah.
more money. So it's not only paying for the boat that's more, it's all the upkeep and
Yeah.
just generally living on the boat that costs more too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we had to take all that into consideration.
Yeah, at some point we were kicking around the idea of just, we can stay in an area that we really like and come into a marina and live the marina life. And we've talked to a lot of people living in some of these marinas. The bottom line is to do that with a catamaran, you could be spending about 50% more, and in some cases even double what you're spending on a monohull. And quite honestly, we were trying to do this within a budget. We had a pretty tight budget. We didn't want to spend too much, but we also liked the whole way that monohulls sell, and there's some real benefits to a monohull. Like underway, they can be pretty smooth in rough water, and we felt like some of the places that we were going to go, you would have some rougher water crossing, not entire oceans, but you could be a couple hundred miles to get to another island, and there winds and stuff can kick up, and so we wanted something that sailed more stable. And the catamarans, there's a lot of people that talk about the catamarans, they get a little bouncy out there, and in a really, really bad storm, if they got some high winds, the thing could flip over even, and it won't right side it back, where in a good monohull, if you get knocked down, if the wind hits you from the side, let's say, and the boat comes all the way over, the ballast in the boat, the weight of the keel would help bring the boat back right. And so out at sea, monohull tends to be a safer choice. And so less money, safer choice, a little bit better sailing. The catamarans are like floating condos at an anchorage, and everybody talks about it, and they have lots of sprawling room inside, and the salon and the kitchen, and you can seat lots of people, and they've got a lot of beautiful space. You're paying for it, and and we've started learning to live in kind of small spaces on that, and this was going to be a good choice for us, and so this is why we stayed focused on these boats that were shown. So that's a lot. Sorry, we didn't mean to just drop all of that on you, but
Cut this part out anyway.
okay, well, she's going to cut it out. But anyways, ready? So that's all we got, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching. We'd love to read your comments and questions about our decision-making process. And be sure to join us next time as we navigate the process of negotiating and go into contract on a sailboat.